This video will serve as a guide to constructing a sideboard as it pertains to the Pauper format. Sideboard construction is a critical part of deck building, yet it is very frequently overlooked. So you've built your first Pauper deck and you have the main board nearly perfected. But in your first match, you face a powerful affinity deck and get absolutely destroyed. How can that be? You built your deck perfectly, but it can't do a thing against this deck. You have no options or answers to their cards, and as a result, you end up losing your match in a spectacular display of failure. That's why we have sideboards. Sideboards allow us to fine-tune our deck strategy to better counter an opponent's deck. Generally, these are very flexible parts of your deck, being tailored specifically to your playgroup. So, if you have a lot of affinity players in your meta, it would be good to include more artifact hate in your sideboard. If you have a lot of token generators or white weenies in your meta, more board wipes may be necessary. So let's look at some of the most used sideboard cards in Pauper and why they're used. Gleeful Sabotage is a mainstay in green decks that can generate decent amounts of creatures. A 2-drop card that can destroy a target enchantment or an artifact is good, but to be able to tap 2 additional creatures to get a second copy of the spell means that you can get rid of 2 threats with 1 spell. Facing off against affinity players, this card is perfect inclusion in your sideboard, and it would be wise to put a full playset into the main deck when you side in. Since most affinity players run the artifact lands as their main land base, Gleeful Sabotage can not only target their artifact creatures, but their artifact lands as well, except for Darksteel Citadel, of course. This can cripple their strategy, and that's what we want. Facing against Bogles or any aura-based strategy, this card can help remove these frustrating enchantments. Since we cannot target the Slippery Bogle with our spells, we must find other ways to deal with this threat. So let's get rid of their auras. Here, our Sabotage shines through. Because of the flexibility and mana intensity of only 1 green mana of Gleeful Sabotage, and the number of decks that it can be used against, this card is a perfect inclusion in any sideboard that can run green. Electrickery is another card that has a home in many sideboards running red. For its overload cost, which is a mere 2 mana, you can ping every creature that you don't control for 1 damage. Against most token and tribal decks like elves and white weenies, this spells game over for their creatures. You could be facing down a horde of 1/1 creatures poised to hand you a game over, but at instant speed they will be all burnt to ash by Electrickery. For 2 mana and being very splashable at only 1 red mana, this card finds its home in many decks that can introduce red. Having access to this burn spell can also make a game against something like Pauper Elves infinitely easier. Now that we've talked about one of the nastiest board wipes in Pauper, we have to look at another card that is key to countering board wipes. Many of these board wipes deal 1 damage to our creatures, or lower their toughness by 1 or 2 to kill our field. Spider Silk Armor can give us a butt bump to our creatures, allowing them to live beyond the 1 damage that normally would do them in. This means that our creatures can block more stuff and live, and survive more pinging and live. This is the key to our victory, which is why most decks that can run green and have smaller creatures will want to run a few copies of Spider Silk Armor. Again, your sideboard may be different as your needs may differ. Perhaps no one you're running against plays Burn. Perhaps you have a lot of tribal players in your meta. You can look at what cards that your deck can utilize to best counter and combat these decks, and adjust your sideboard accordingly. You have 15 cards in your sideboard at your disposal. You need to make every card count. If your deck struggles against one type of deck more than others, perhaps you should add in more hate towards that deck into your sideboard. Put in a few Hydroblasts to side in against burn builds. The goal is to set yourself into a better position to handle and win against your opponents. By building an effective sideboard, you can be ready for any number of situations to help your deck power through a victory. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, remember to like the video and let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with your friends and Magic the Gathering playgroup. And finally, subscribe to the Planeswalker project for all the latest Magic the Gathering videos. And thank you!